Every year in the late spring, Bert and Jamie Coates leave their home in Gold Bar, Washington, and travel up the winding mountain roads of Stevens Pass in Washington State's Cascade Mountain Range. They make the 45-minute trip several times a week throughout the spring and summer, up to Wellington, which sits perched high in the North Cascades. 6 years ago, Bert and Jamie discovered Wellington and fell in love with all that it had to offer. From the beauty and tranquility of the mountains to the spirits that they believe have remained at Wellington more than 100 years after the avalanche disaster that claimed 96 lives.
When we first showed up here, it was around 2004, and we were doing a search on the internet for areas that could possibly be haunted, and Wellington popped up as the train wreckage and the history behind it.
At first it was just Bert and I and the kid, and then some other friends that probably has like 7 kids started coming up here. So it's been quite a while.
Come prepared to accept the area for what it is and what it offers. There's a lot of history here that has been forgotten.
And as interesting as this place is, there's a lot of, whether you believe it or not, there's a spirit.
You have to remember 100 people died here. If you want to come up here and respect the place for the history, maybe see if you can experience something, the observation deck and the snow shed. Just be quiet, sit back and listen.
Wellington, Washington is not your typical ghost town. Built in the late 1800s, Wellington was a town that existed solely to support the Great Northern Railway. Today, all that remains is a trailhead for the Iron Goat Trail, a concrete snowshed, and some crumbling foundations. In this peaceful alpine setting, it's hard to believe that this was once the scene of the worst avalanche disaster in the history of the United States.
Wellington really is a story of heroic struggle and ultimately epic failure. A group of passengers set out on a train just trying to get across the Cascade Mountains between Spokane and Seattle during the worst snowstorm in the recorded history of the Pacific Northwest.
2 trains headed towards Seattle at the same time. On the 23rd, they were stopped at the Cascade Station.
See, it was a storm unlike any ever recorded in the Pacific Northwest. It snowed continuously for 10 days. It actually turned out to be 3 storms, one after the other. And despite having 6 rotary snowplows that could chew through 13 feet of snow, they were completely unable to clear the lines.
And with the amount of snow that was here during that year of 1910, it was more than ever before on record.
The Great Northern Railway Superintendent James O'Neill was on site with his personal train in order to take charge of the snow removal effort. O'Neill believed that a good general led the charge from the front, and he was never the type to back down from a challenge.
When O'Neill had come up here to check out the avalanche that was blocking Windy Point Tunnel, he had never had a train stand in one spot for longer than 24 hours during the winter. So he signaled the train from the east side of the tunnel at Cascade Tunnel Station through the tunnel, and then it was stopped at Wellington, thinking that they would blow through this avalanche without any problems. Unfortunately, they were stuck there for the next 5 days. And during that time, there was multiple avalanches.
They were pulled into Wellington without incident, but right after reaching Wellington, a large slide came down west of Wellington and blocked them at Wellington.
So now they're bottlenecked.
And rather than lose any more time, the trains were parked at what was thought to be the safest place, which was the passing tracks at Wellington. There were 2 sets of tracks outside of the main line, and the main line was kept clear so that the rotary snowplows could use it to try and clear the avalanche debris away. The night before the avalanche occurred, there was a large slide at Cascade Station that wiped out the beanery where they had eaten and killed 2 men that were working inside, basically the cook and his apprentice. And when word got through the tunnel that Cascade Station had been wiped out, the people on the train began to panic.
With the trains trapped, the only way out for the passengers was a 2.5-mile hike down the avalanche exposed rail lines to Windy Point. On the morning of February 27th, a group of train men led by Superintendent O'Neill made the hike through deep snowdrifts, ending in a treacherous 800-foot slide down the side of the mountain to scenic hot springs. A group of 5 able-bodied male passengers soon followed. While all made it out alive, the conditions were too treacherous to evacuate the passengers by that route. The next morning, the train's conductor led a larger group of passengers along the same route in conditions that were slightly better than the day before. He returned after dark with word that it would be safe for the passengers to hike out at first light.
If the telegraph lines had been working, they would have gotten the message back quickly, but by the time somebody hiked back up the hill and got back to Wellington to let them know that there wasn't a possible escape route, it was too late in the day to start out. It was getting too close to dark.
A rainstorm came in with a lot of lightning. It released what was on top of the mountain, and then it took the 2 trains down into the ravine below.
The trains had been placed on the spur tracks at Wellington because it was believed to be the least avalanche-prone part of the mountainside. No one could ever recall an avalanche occurring in that spot. Unfortunately, a forest fire had raged out of control in the summer of 1909, leaving the entire mountainside bare of its usual heavy forestation. When combined with all of the snow and rain that had dumped on the slopes above Wellington in the 10 days preceding the avalanche, conditions were ripe for disaster. The trains were sitting on a ledge on the edge of a mountain. On one side of the tracks was the dangerous snow-filled slope. On the other side was a 100-foot plunge to the river valley below. When the snow on the slopes above the train tracks finally let go following a lightning strike at 1:42 a.m. on March 1, 1910, more than 6 acres, covering a half-mile of hillside, let go, sweeping the trains, what remained of the trees, ice, rocks, and snow down into the Tye River Valley. It wasn't a fast-moving avalanche, but with thousands of tons of snow and ice and debris, it didn't have to be. Along with the trees and rocks, the avalanche also picked up 3 heavy electric locomotives and a disabled rotary snowplow, all which smashed down onto the 2 trains as the avalanche roared down the mountain. The avalanche woke everyone in town, and the townspeople and rail workers raced down to the site of the carnage to begin rescue efforts. Rescue workers dug and clawed their way into over 40 feet of ice and debris in an effort to rescue survivors. Despite their superhuman efforts in nearly impossible conditions, by noon the last of the 27 survivors had been pulled from the wreckage. The final body, however, wasn't recovered until mid-July. Many of the bodies were mangled beyond recognition and had to be identified through process of elimination. It is still unknown how many undocumented immigrant snow shovelers lost their life that day. After all was said and done, at least 96 passengers and rail workers perished in the avalanche of March 1, 1910. Wellington remains to this day the worst avalanche disaster in the history of the United States. Immediately following the disaster, the Great Northern Railway began construction on a half-mile-long concrete snowshed to protect trains as they passed through Wellington. The name of Wellington became synonymous with disaster, and the town was quietly renamed Tye. In 1927, a new tunnel was built through the Cascade Mountains in a less dangerous location. In 1929, the new tunnel was opened, and the town of Wellington was burned to the ground. All that remained was the Tye Depot. Today, all that is left of the once bustling town of Wellington is a half-mile-long concrete snowshed and a field of rail car debris on the banks of the Tye River.